Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of the Qualiverse. I'm Jim Maltese, and today we're going to be talking about the costs of poor quality. Could you imagine just blindly following a recipe in the kitchen without checking or tasting your food along the way? I remember my friend had a recipe for a penne alla vodka for a dinner for four that once called for 5 heads of garlic to go in the sauce. Not 5 cloves, right? 5 heads, the whole thing of garlic, not the little pieces of the garlic, 5 huge heads. And we were in college. He was a beginner cook. He didn't think twice about it and just chopped up an obscene amount of garlic. And I'm Italian. And when I say obscene, I'm talking obscene amount of garlic for the sauce. He cooked it up and served it without tasting it. We literally thought something was burning, and it was the garlic. The entire pasta dish had to get thrown out. All that food, all that garlic was wasted. The dinner was ruined. I mean, we still had, some salad, but there was no main course. Now, naturally, as his skills matured, he learned to spot potential typos in the recipe, like not heads, cloves. He learned to taste his food along the way, most importantly, to make sure he was on the right track. He learned when he had to follow the recipe to a T, like in baking. For instance, that's very, very specific, and when he had some leeway. And so you can kind of massage a few things when you're making sauces. But most importantly, he learned to taste the dish before serving it to his friends. Being good friends, naturally, we haven't let him live down Garligeddon. As you cook, you don't think of tasting the food as wasting time, right? It's just part of the process. It's the only way to make sure it comes out the way you want. It's also the only way to avoid wasting food by throwing it out because it tastes terrible. No one complains that tasting food or checking temperature on a roast or letting steak rest is a waste of time. It's just part of the process of delivering tasty, delicious, excellent food. And this iterative testing process isn't efficient, right? We use it to avoid wasting food and deliver goodness and good quality food. It's actually very efficient. And it's also much better to taste along the way so you can course correct when you need to, right? As opposed to only tasting the food at the very end when it's too late to do anything about it. And it's exactly the same as providing quality assurance while delivering AV systems. Could you imagine simply connecting a system together as shown on the drawings and then just blindly turning it over to the client and keeping your fingers crossed? I've actually seen this done before, and I can assure you no one was happy. The systems were turned over to the users without ever powering them on. And this was in a government building, a very large government building with a lot of courtrooms in it. And we found things like, and we were there to commission all the systems, and we found things like there not being power in the ceiling for all the projectors. We found mixers that never had their DSP configurations pushed to them. We found control systems not loaded. It was a complete disaster. I think we can all agree that some form of testing is required before turning the systems over to the client. Something, right? The question is how much? And so let's talk about that a little bit, right? We should definitely make sure all the promised system functions are operational. That's our function testing, right? And we should definitely make sure that it was built properly and it performs as intended. That's our performance testing. And we should definitely have a method of documenting what tests were performed so that we can both attack this testing as a team, as a single unit, as well as confirm that actually all the tests were completed. And that's the checklist we talked about last time. And we should definitely perform many small tests along the way so we can course correct as required. So we're not left with something huge that's wrong at the end. And these are our small project milestones. And by that reasoning, we just kind of invented the AV9000 quality management standard. It's simply tasting the sauce along the way to make sure it's delicious. And think about it, systems are already being definitely tested along the way. When you build racks, you test continuity, you look at the different terminations, you make sure all the cables are there, all the lines are there as per the drawings. When we load DSP files, we balance the rooms, we set gain structure. We're doing all these audio tests as we're configuring the DSP files. When we load program system, control system programming, we test the buttons, we make sure all the functions are there, we make sure the menus are exactly how we expect them to be. So all we're talking about with this quality management stuff is to document it, right? To make sure we did it completely and not just haphazardly or on the fly. We're not talking about adding anything to the process here. We're just talking about making sure the testing is complete and reported. And I think that's why I don't understand why some people claim that quality management is too expensive. Some form of testing has to get done before the users can take ownership of the system. So, should it be that haphazard testing or a documented process based testing? Testing is already part of the process in some form. An AV 9000 quality management standard for the AV industry simply provides a way to deliver that testing completely and consistently. And so not only does testing have to get done, but it will also save all stakeholders money, time, and headaches. So just think about what happens when there's an issue on a project. These are the hidden costs of poor quality, right? And I made this very expensive tool. I think we can get it in frame, right? Okay, so this tool that I built, I spent a lot of time on it, just showcases how much these different hidden costs right, as they're compared to each other. So let's say all work stops. We've got double dollar signs for sure. And then we have an entire team of technicians that go into a holding pattern. Well, that slides over to maybe $3 signs. Now, this issue may require additional hardware. That's $2 signs. We have to expedite the shipping to get it there to avoid any delays. We also need to think about maybe some additional engineering time. And obviously it needs to get approved, right, to make sure that it's good and meeting the user's needs. But now we got to start talking about escalation meetings with executives, and those executives, they get up there in the salary. So we're talking about very highly costed meetings. And then the follow-up, sometimes we need weekly follow-ups, which might be, double dollars, or if we're talking daily follow-ups, because it's that type of escalation, we're talking a lot of money. Projects may be delayed, so temporary equipment may need to be rented, and so we're at double dollars. And if a room's not ready to be turned over and the user had meetings scheduled, now we're talking $3 signs to rent an entirely new space. And additional work may be needed to add to the project, right? That's typically how change orders work. But sometimes that work has to be done after hours. And so now we slide over to the triple dollar signs because these rooms have already been turned over. So there are a lot of potentially hidden costs because of poor quality or ignoring quality. And here's the thing, these additional costs are shared by everyone involved in the project. So I'm talking the designers, the installers, the owners, everyone. And the problem is they're very rarely tracked as being attributed to poor quality. So you may think that the integrator eats most of these costs, but that would be wrong. Sure, the integrator has to come back, they have to fix it, they have to order stuff, they have to expedite shipping, and those are all hidden costs. But the designers may have to engineer a new solution, they may have to review the suggested changes from the field, and they have to attend escalation meetings. So those are a ton of hidden costs. But the owners have it even worse, right? Not only do they have to review the changes, get them approved, but they have to also attend those escalation meetings. They have to deal with not having the equipment or rooms ready on schedule and come up with a plan B. And all that time, not only to make plan B happen, but get it approved and justify it and getting the money, finding the money somewhere for it. These are all meetings and times that were not accounted for. Additionally, owners may have to pay someone from their team to be on site after hours, or pay for security escorts around the facility if it's a secure building or something like that. All of these costs were not planned on, and they add up crazy quickly. And let's just put a number on it, right? We're here, so let's say the average salary of all those project stakeholders is about $100,000 a year. That's $50 an hour. So let's say we have an escalation meeting and 12 people are invited to that escalation meeting. That means each hour of that meeting is $600. That is $600 a cost of poor quality. But not only that, for the designers and integrators, there are opportunity costs involved as well. So that means that, if a company has to put someone in an escalation meeting, they have to pay their salary. but they also can't charge for work that would be happening on other projects, so they lose even more money. So let's say we'll take that same example where each person in that escalation meeting costs the company $50 an hour, $100,000 a year. That's $50 an hour. And let's say they would ordinarily, if they weren't in that escalation meeting, they would have the opportunity to be charging other clients $150 an hour for their services. That means when you include the opportunity costs, escalation meetings actually cost designers and integrators $200 an hour. So let's say an integrator had 4 people in that escalation meeting. That escalation meeting actually cost the integrator $800 an hour to have those 4 people there. And so, like I said, these costs add up so quickly when you include all the actual costs of the meeting as well as the lost profits of that meeting, because the people who are in that meeting on the design team, on the install team, on the owner team can't be working on the projects they expected to, right? This is the hidden costs of poor quality. So when we measure these hidden costs of poor quality, or the costs of ignoring quality, they typically account for 10 to 15% of a project's cost on average, sometimes as high as 40%. And that's mind blowing, right? And is it any wonder why some of these AV folks who sell projects at 10 to 15% margins can't turn a profit? They expect to realize something. But when you include all of these hidden project costs, there's nothing there, right? So that means if we sell a project for $100,000, we are wasting, or if we're ignoring quality management, we are throwing $10,000 to $15,000 out the window because of escalation meetings, because of missing equipment, because of rework, because of warranty calls. All of these things add up so quickly. And, integrators and designers expect to realize a modest profit when projects are sold. But if you have 20 nightmare projects later, they're in the red, right? Because of poor quality, because of ignoring these quality management standard and ideals. And not to mention the opportunity cost for future partnership with these owners and clients, because the systems have so many issues. Why would you go back to the design or install team that gave you this hunk of junk, right? You want someone to put it in right the first time. You don't want to have to just the headaches and the hassle of calling them up to fix something that they put in a week ago. It's miserable. There are a lot of costs involved, and that's why it's wise to pay attention to it. And is it any wonder why owners get so frustrated with AV projects, not even due to poor quality of the AV team, but what about when we're brought into the project late, right? If the AV team is historically the last part of the design or construction team to be brought to the table, next thing you know, we're asking for power and data at locations we weren't planned on. Walls have to be opened up again. Cables need to be pulled when there were poor coordination upstream during the programming phase. Rework is very expensive, and these all get added to the overall project costs and change orders, but they're never attributed to poor quality. It's just a project, right? And so they are all hidden costs due to poor quality. Now, with a mature, vetted quality management system, most of these costs could have been avoided. It is always less expensive to do it right the first time. It is also always less expensive to catch issues earlier on in the process where there is opportunity to fix things. And just think about it, right? Let's take the example of catching a missing floor box. If we catch the missing floor box during the design phase, we can very easily implement change. We can update drawings, we can communicate the change to the project team. It's done. It costs us a couple of hours. No big deal. But if we catch that missing floor box at the end of the project, after the system has been installed, we got a problem, right? I mean, do we have to pull up carpets? Do we tell the client that just moved in that we're going to be cutting into their concrete floors with loud saws and jackhammers over the next few days? Do we tell the team members close by that they may want to bring in their masks because of all the dust we're going to be kicking up while we cut these floor boxes in? Or worst case, right? Do we just delete it from the project altogether, and now the users don't have their needs met? And even if it works flawlessly, it's a failed system because the needs were not met. So it is much more difficult and expensive to fix issues downstream in the project cycle than catching them as close to the design phase as possible. And that's all this quality stuff is trying to do. Consistently deliver complete systems on time, within budget, without the headaches. It's not more expensive to implement quality management processes. It's way more expensive to ignore them, especially when you start to measure all those hidden costs of poor quality. The take home that I hope you take away from this is it is critical to taste the sauce along the way. All right, so that does it for episode 3. I hope you're enjoying these little adventures into quality management, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Please like and comment and subscribe, and have an AV day.